Before diving into this incredible story, remember to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Here, every story has something to say, and you won't want to miss a single one. The sun was setting over the city, casting an orange glow on the glass skyscrapers. In a chic Manhattan restaurant, the hushed whispers of the patrons mingled with the clinking of silver cutlery. At a secluded table, Alexander Hartley, a millionaire known for his audacious business ventures and taste for luxury, was absently examining his dinner. His eyes, though sharp when it came to numbers and contracts, seemed oblivious to the imminent danger that lay before him in the form of a single bite. As he brought the fork to his mouth, a piercing cry tore through the air. "Sir, don't eat that." All eyes turned to her. A young woman, visibly emaciated but with a gaze blazing with determination, rushed between the millionaire and his plate. The customers murmured, some amused, others perplexed. Alexander stopped, suspended in mid-stride, his eyes wide with surprise and confusion. The girl, catching her breath, added, It's dangerous. You'll die if you swallow it." He stared at her in disbelief, then his eyes drifted down to his plate. His hands trembled as he realized that what he was about to eat contained a deadly substance, slipped unknowingly into his food. Alexander's heart pounded in his chest, but before he could say a word, the girl held out her hand, her face etched with fear but also with an unusual boldness. In the tense silence, the truth began to emerge. This girl wasn't just a stranger, she had seen something, somewhere, that could shatter her entire world. And tonight, with a desperate cry and unexpected determination, she had just saved the life of a man whose fate seemed already sealed by power and wealth. But this heroic act was only the beginning of a story that would involve secrets, betrayals, and terrifying revelations. The Magnolia restaurant, renowned for its Michelin-starred cuisine and hushed atmosphere, was filled with wealthy businessmen and celebrities. Alexander Hartley, dressed in a bespoke black suit and a watch worth more than some of the clients' annual salaries, relished the illusion of security offered by this world of luxury. He had spent his days signing contracts, negotiating acquisitions, and managing financial crises that most people wouldn't even dare to imagine. But at that moment, he was only thinking about enjoying his meal, a filet mignon accompanied by truffles and delicately prepared vegetables. Suddenly, a piercing cry echoed through the room. "Sir, don't eat that." All eyes turned towards the source of the cry. A young girl, her face marked by fatigue and life's hardships, stood there, panting, her hands outstretched towards him. Her brown hair, tied back in a ponytail, trembled slightly as she tried to keep her balance in her worn heels. Alexander froze, the fork suspended halfway between his mouth. His gaze flickered from the plate to the girl, incredulous. "Who are you? What are you doing here?" he asked in a trembling voice, half anger, half disbelief. I had to warn you," she stammered. "Someone put something dangerous in your food. You mustn't eat it." The murmurs of the other customers became a buzzing in his ears. A few waiters had frozen, watching the scene with a mixture of confusion and fear. Alexander felt a cold sweat run down his back. He was used to controlling every situation, every detail, but now, he was completely powerless. With a mixture of adrenaline and panic, he slowly withdrew his hand. The girl moved even closer, more confident despite her fragile appearance. She placed a hand on his arm and looked him straight in the eyes. "Please. I beg you. Don't take that bite." At that precise moment, Alexander understood that he had just had a brush with death. And behind this courageous act lay something far more complex than a simple warning. This girl knew secrets that, if revealed, could turn his entire life, and his empire, upside down. She didn't know it yet, but by screaming that night, she had just triggered a chain of events that would drag them both into a whirlwind of betrayals, revelations, and deadly dangers. After the alert, the Magnolia room seemed to hold its breath. Alexander Hartley, still trembling, pushed back his chair and stared at the young woman with a mixture of anger, suspicion, and intrigue. "You're going to have to explain, now," he said, his voice firmer but still betraying a hint of panic. The girl took a deep breath, trying to calm her racing heart. Her hands were still slightly trembling, but her gaze remained steady and determined. "My name is Emily Carter," she began. I used to work, in the kitchens of this restaurant. I saw someone slip something into your dish. I don't know why, but I knew you were going to eat it." Alexander frowned. He knew all the security measures in high-end restaurants. How could someone get through all those protections without being noticed? "Why me? Why risk your life for a stranger?" he asked, his voice softer this time, curious despite himself. Emily lowered her eyes for a moment, before whispering. "Because I know who you are, and what it means if something happens to you. You are an influential man, Mr. Hartley. If you were to die, some truths would remain buried, and innocent people would suffer." Alexander felt a shiver run down his spine. Who had put that substance in his food, and why? And above all, how did that girl know details he didn't even know? Before he could reply, a waiter rushed over, visibly panicked. "Mr. Hartley. We found the suspicious bottle in the kitchen." Emily looked at Alexander, her eyes filled with an intensity he had never seen before. "You see? It wasn't an accident. Someone wanted to kill you. And I'm the only one who was able to warn you in time." Alexander took a deep breath. For the first time in his life, he felt powerless, vulnerable, and strangely grateful to this unknown young girl who had just saved his life. But behind this relief lay an even more disturbing truth: someone close to him wanted him dead. And Emily Carter, this fearless stranger, had just become his fragile link to the truth. In that silent moment, an implicit pact was formed between them. She had saved him, and now he had to find out who wanted him dead, before it was too late. The next morning, Alexander Hartley awoke in his luxurious suite at the Hartley Tower Hotel, but the opulence surrounding him did little to soothe the anguish that gripped him. Every detail of the poisoning attempt replayed in his mind: who could have wanted to kill him and why? He didn't hesitate to call Emily Carter. When she arrived, wearing a simple black coat and with her eyes still as piercing as ever, Alexander understood that this young girl was nothing like the people he usually associated with in his circle of power. "I want to know everything you know," he said, his fingers gripping the marble table in his office. Emily took a deep breath. "I'm not sure I understand everything myself, but I saw something last night in the kitchen. A strange man came in through the back. He slipped the substance into your dish and left as if nothing had happened. I managed to see him just in time, and he was wearing a ring with a particular symbol." Alexander frowned. "A ring? A symbol?" It looked like a secret sign, something organized. "Do you remember this symbol?" he asked insistently. Emily Boy la tête. "Yes, it's a circle with 3 intersecting lines. I don't know what it means, but I have a feeling this isn't the first time this has happened here. There's something bigger behind all this." Alexander felt a tension rising in his chest. His empire, his businesses, even his personal life, everything suddenly seemed threatened. And Emily's revelation confirmed his worst fears: this poisoning attempt was not an isolated act, but a carefully calculated warning. "Emily, you have to trust me. We're going to investigate together. I want to know who did this and why. You risked your life for me, and I won't let these people get away with it." Emily hesitated for a moment, then nodded. "Very well, but I warn you, Mr. Hartley, you are entering a world where everyone can be your enemy. Even those you believe to be close to you." Alexander then understood that it wasn't just his life that was at stake. Every clue they found, every revelation they uncovered, could shatter the order he had spent years building. But for the first time, he felt that Emily's presence wasn't a mere coincidence. She might be the only one who could help him weather this storm. In that moment of silent tension, they exchanged a glance, a mixture of defiance, fear, and determination. The investigation had just begun, and neither of them knew where this truth would lead them. Alexander Hartley and Emily Carter met early in the morning in Alexander's private office, overlooking Manhattan. The city seemed peaceful from this vantage point, but they both knew that danger was very real, lurking in the shadows. Emily took out a small notebook that she had kept with her since the day before. "I took note of everything I saw and heard. The man who tried to poison you. I think he wasn't alone, she murmured. There was someone else in the kitchen, but I couldn't see their face. Alexander slammed his fist on the table in frustration. So someone has been planning this for a while, and we have almost nothing to start with. But this ring, this symbol. It must mean something. Emily nodded and pulled out a photo she had discreetly taken with her phone. The circle with 3 intersecting lines was clearly visible on the man's ring. That's it. I don't know exactly what it is, but I've seen it before, somewhere in one of your financial reports, said Alexander thoughtfully. Intrigued, Emily looked at him. Do you think someone in your circle might be involved? Alexander sighed. He knew every partner, every investor, every member of his staff. Yet, a chill ran down his spine. It wasn't uncommon for jealousies and rivalries to take extreme forms in the business world. Yes, and I'm afraid it's closer to what I thought, he replied gravely. We need to check every single person who had access to my meetings, meals, and files in recent weeks. They then began reviewing the restaurant's security camera footage and employee reports. And that's when Emily noticed something subtle but disturbing. Look at this sequence. This man came in right after the delivery of the private tray you requested every night. It wasn't a coincidence. He knew exactly when and how to act. Alexander nodded, feeling anger and fear mingle in his eyes. So someone in my circle knew my habits, and wanted to use that information to kill me. Emily, we're dealing with someone very cunning, and I fear he's far more dangerous than we imagine. At that moment, a notification appeared on Emily's phone, an anonymous message, simple, but chilling. You don't know everything yet, Miss Carter. And you have no idea what awaits you. Emily paled, clutching her phone tightly. Alexander looked at her, determined but worried. That's it, they know we're investigating. We have to be careful. And fast. One certainty became clear to both of them: the game had just begun, and every move could be decisive. In the following days, Alexander Hartley and Emily Carter immersed themselves in a meticulous investigation, analyzing employees, business partners, and everyone with access to his daily life. Every detail became crucial, every suspicious gesture a potential clue. Emily showed Alexander a video clip from the restaurant's security cameras. Look at that man, she said, pointing at the screen. He moved without drawing attention, exactly as if someone had guided him. But he's not just an ordinary employee, there's something about his posture, the way he moves. Alexander narrowed his eyes. The man's face was strangely familiar to him. I know him. I've met him before at a private reception at my office. He was a long-time consultant, Michael Drayton. Always discreet, never directly involved in business. But, why would he have tried to kill me? Emily frowned. Maybe he didn't do it alone. Maybe someone manipulated him. Alexander stood up and walked nervously into his office. The fact that Michael, a trusted associate of his for years, could be involved deeply upset him. I need to talk to Michael. But discreetly. If someone is watching us, the slightest misstep could be fatal. They decided to meet him in a neutral location, a discreet cafe in a quiet alley. Michael Drayton was waiting for them, impeccably dressed as always, but his eyes betrayed an unusual tension. Alexander. Emily, what are you doing here together? He asked in a controlled but slightly trembling voice. Alexander wasted no time. Michael, I know you're connected to the poisoning attempt. I want to know why. Who implicated you? Michael took a step back, seemingly searching for his words. Then, in a barely audible whisper. You don't understand, you're in danger. Not just me, you and Emily too. There's a group, Alexander, a group ready to do anything to overthrow your empire. I had no choice. Emily felt her heart race. Which group? And how do you know Emily? Michael looked around, as if to make sure no one was listening, then whispered. I can't say everything here. But know this, the ring, the symbol, they belong to a secret, influential organization that has infiltrated several levels of your inner circle. They want more than your money, Alexander. They want your downfall. Alexander felt an icy chill wash over him. Emily, beside him, squeezed his hand, aware that what they were discovering went far beyond a simple poisoning attempt. Then we must stop them, he murmured, determined. Before they strike again. And for the first time, Emily felt that she was no longer simply a spectator or a rescuer. She was now a crucial link in a battle that would decide the fate of 2 lives, and the empire of a man who thought he controlled everything. Alexander Hartley and Emily Carter now knew they were in danger, but the gravity of the situation was becoming increasingly apparent. The secret organization Michael Drayton had spoken of wasn't just cunning, it had infiltrated his inner circle. Every move, every conversation could be monitored. To proceed without arousing suspicion, they decided to meet in Alexander's old private library, a place rarely used for years. The walls were lined with antique books, the heavy curtains filtering the daylight, creating an atmosphere that was both mysterious and secure. "We need to find out who among my loved ones is involved," Alexander said, staring at Emily. "But we have to be subtle. One wrong move and we could lose everything." Emily nodded and took out a small laptop she had brought with her. She began to analyze recent activity within the company, access to confidential files, and suspicious communications. "Look at this," she whispered. A series of encrypted messages appeared on the screen. All of them came from a board member, Robert Langley, a man considered loyal for years. Alexander felt a pang in his heart. Robert was not just a business partner, he was a longtime friend. Robert? Impossible, he has always been loyal. He built this empire with me. Emily shook her head. Appearances can be deceiving. These messages show that he communicated with someone using the ring symbol. He knew what was being planned. Alexander took a deep breath, trying to remain calm. He knew that to discover the truth, he had to act with caution and strategy. "We're going to trap him," he declared. "I'm going to invite him to a private meeting, make him believe I'm going to discuss new acquisitions. And we'll see who's behind him." As evening fell, Robert arrived at the library, impeccably dressed as always, but his expression betrayed a nervousness that Alexander had never noticed. "Alexander, Emily, what's going on?" he asked, trying to hide his concern. Alexander stared intently at him, a calm, calculating tone in his voice. "Robert, I want you to be honest with me. Who asked you to poison me?" An icy silence filled the room. Robert stiffened, and his eyes avoided Alexander's. It was all they needed. Before Robert could reply, Emily declared. "We have all the evidence. The ring, the messages, your movements. You have nowhere to lie." Robert slumped into a chair, his face pale, and finally murmured. "I had no choice, they are threatening my family. If I didn't cooperate, they would kill her." Alexander felt a mixture of anger, betrayal, and understanding. The danger was closer than he had imagined. And now, he and Emily knew they had to not only outwit the organization, but also protect those they loved. That evening, in the library, an unexpected alliance was formed, Alexander, Emily, and even Robert, now under their control, against an invisible and ruthless enemy. After Robert Langley's confession, Alexander Hartley and Emily Carter realized that time was running out. The secret organization wouldn't be satisfied with mere threats, it would strike again, and more violently. They needed a plan to neutralize the danger and uncover the identity of its mysterious leader. Alexander called a strategic meeting in his main office. The heavy curtains were drawn, and only a thin ray of light illuminated the whiteboard where he was sketching the plan. Emily was hunched over her computer, ready to analyze every piece of data. Robert, now an ally, watched intently, visibly nervous. "We're going to set a trap," Alexander declared, his voice firm and determined. "We're going to make the organization believe that I'm having dinner alone tonight. They'll think they have another opportunity to strike." Emily nodded. "I can set up an advanced surveillance system in the restaurant, hide cameras and microphones. We can observe every movement without them suspecting a thing. Robert intervened, his voice trembling. I know their modus operandi. They never take unnecessary risks. But if you leave an opening, they won't miss it. You'll have to be extremely careful. That evening, Alexander showed up at a secluded restaurant, seemingly alone, while Emily and Robert monitored his every move from an adjacent room equipped with cameras and discreet listening devices. Everything seemed calm, until a waiter entered, carrying a carefully covered tray. Emily and Robert exchanged a worried glance. Alexander's heart was beating faster, but he forced himself to remain calm. Suddenly, a man entered from behind the waiter, wearing a ring with the symbol of 3 intersecting lines. Adrenaline surged instantly. Emily whispered. He is the organization's messenger. We must act now. Alexander gave Robert a slight signal, who discreetly activated a video recorder and an automatic locking device. The waiter, an accomplice of the organization, tried to slip away, but was immediately intercepted. The man with the ring, taken by surprise, tried to flee, but the doors locked. You won't leave without talking, Alexander said, his voice icy. Who sent you? Who runs this organization? The man hesitated, seized by panic, but under Emily's determined gaze and Alexander's presence, he finally whispered. You don't know the real leader yet, and you're already too close to your end. The threatening tone only increased the tension in the room. Alexander now knew one thing: the real enemy was not only close, he was intelligent, calculating, and much more dangerous than they had imagined. That night, a clear message emerged: the battle for survival was only just beginning, and the key piece of the puzzle was still unknown. After trapping one of the organization's messengers, Alexander Hartley and Emily Carter realized they were finally on the right track. But the true leader remained a mystery. Who could be cunning and ruthless enough to orchestrate poisoning attempts while remaining in the shadows? Emily analyzed the data recovered during the interception of the messenger. The communications, although coded, suggested a complex network linking several influential members of Alexander's company, and beyond. Alexander, look at this, she said, pointing at the screen. All the connections lead to a name you know very well, Victoria Hartley. Alexander felt his blood run cold. Victoria? His own sister, whom he thought had been out of the picture for years? It was impossible. He and Victoria had had disagreements in the past, but he never would have imagined she could become his lifelong enemy. It's a mistake, he murmured, his voice choked with emotion. Victoria, my sister, she would never do that. Emily shook her head firmly. The evidence is there. She used her influence to infiltrate the organization within your circle. She wanted your downfall, and she knew exactly how to strike without arousing suspicion. Alexander recalled clues he had ignored: unexplained movements, strange financial decisions, secret invitations. Everything now took on a frightening meaning. Determined to confront the truth, Alexander contacted Victoria for a private meeting. The chosen location was the old family home, a place filled with childhood memories, where no assistant or employee could interrupt them. Victoria was already waiting for him in the main living room, her face impassive. Alexander. I was wondering when you'd find out, she said, with icy calm. I knew you'd figure it out eventually. Alexander felt a burning anger rising within him, but he forced himself to keep his composure. Why, Victoria? Why risk the lives of everyone around me, and threaten myself? Victoria gave a slight smile. Because you never wanted to share power, Alexander. And now it was time you learned what it means to lose everything you've built. Emily, silent but vigilant at his side, understood that the confrontation would not only be physical or strategic. It would be mental, emotional, and devastating. Alexander then knew that the ultimate battle was approaching. To protect his life, his empire, and Emily, he had to confront his own sister, the person he thought was closest to him, who had become his most formidable enemy. That evening, in the shadows of the family home, a silent but merciless duel was about to begin. The large clock in the old family home struck midnight when Alexander Hartley faced Victoria in the dimly lit living room. Childhood memories seemed to float around them, but this peaceful atmosphere was merely an illusion. Between them, the tension was palpable, ready to erupt at any moment. "Why now, Victoria?" Alexander asked, his voice breaking with anger and betrayal. "Why all this chaos? We were a family." Victoria advanced slowly, her gaze cold and calculating. "A family? Maybe, but you, Alexander, you never knew how to share control. Always the center, always the power. I was tired of staying in your shadow." Emily, silent but attentive, observed every movement. She knew that a wrong move could trigger a dangerous reaction. "And all those innocent people, what did you risk their lives for?" "For your ego?" asked Alexander. Victoria gave a wry smile. "It's not just about ego. There are truths you're unaware of. The Hartley family has never been as united as you think. Our father." Alexander felt his heart tighten. Memories of his father, a tough but fair man, came flooding back to him. "Our father? What?" he asked, incredulous. Victoria continued, her voice trembling but determined. "Years ago, he made decisions that ruined some families. People you consider innocent, paid for our family mistakes. I decided to right those wrongs, even if it means confronting you and your empire." Alexander felt a mixture of shock and guilt. He never would have imagined that his father's choices could provoke such hatred. And now, Victoria was using these old wounds to justify her actions, and manipulate the secret organization against him. Emily gently squeezed Alexander's arm, bringing him back to reality. "Alexander, we must remain focused. Whatever their reasons, we cannot let them kill you." Victoria took a step forward, determined. "You still don't understand, Alexander. If I do nothing, others will suffer even more because of the Hartleys. And I can no longer remain passive." At that precise moment, Alexander understood that the battle would not only be to save his life, but also to put an end to a cycle of secrets and betrayals that had plagued his family for decades. "So listen to me carefully, Victoria," Alexander said, his voice firm but calm. "I can't let you destroy everything we've built. But I want to understand, and I want us to finish this without any more casualties." Silence fell over the room. Emily knew that this decisive moment would determine the fate not only of Alexander and Victoria, but also of everyone involved in the secret organization. The curtain had fallen on the revelations of the past, but the real confrontation was only about to begin. The grand living room of the old family home seemed almost unreal under the dim lamplight. Alexander Hartley, Emily Carter, and Victoria Hartley faced each other. The atmosphere was electric, each breath heavy with a threat. "Victoria, that's enough," Alexander shouted, anger and determination mingling in his voice. "I understand now what you've been through, what you believe to be right, but that doesn't justify death and chaos." Victoria trembled, not from fear, but from frustration. "You don't understand anything, Alexander. Everything I do to correct the mistakes of our family." Emily stepped forward calmly, but authoritatively. "Victoria, look around you. How many lives have been put in danger because of this plan? There's still time to stop all this. But if you continue, there will be victims, and you will be responsible." For the first time, Victoria seemed to falter. The weight of her actions was palpable, mingled with anger and betrayal. Alexander, sensing an opportunity, spoke softly but firmly. "I don't want to lose you, but I won't let your plan destroy everything we've built. Help me fix what you've broken." A tense silence followed. Then, after a long moment, Victoria lowered her eyes, her hands trembling. "Very well. But everything will have to be repaired. And they won't give up easily," she murmured. With Victoria now forced to cooperate, Emily and Alexander devised a final plan to neutralize the secret organization. Using the information they had gathered, they lured the organization's members into an elaborate trap, combining surveillance, private security forces, and perfect coordination. In a tense sequence, all members of the organization were apprehended before they could act. The ring bearing the symbol of 3 intersecting lines, the organization's emblem, was confiscated. The evidence was handed over to the appropriate authorities, and Alexander's empire was saved. It was a moment of intense relief for Alexander. He almost collapsed onto the sofa, while Emily, beside him, smiled with a mixture of weariness and satisfaction. Victoria, silent, watched the events unfold with a mixture of shame and relief. "We avoided the worst," Alexander said, looking at Emily. "But I'll never forget that you saved me, from day one." Emily blushed slightly, but her smile was genuine. "And you, Alexander, you gave me the chance to make a difference. Together, we succeeded." Victoria, for her part, murmured, I will have to rebuild what I destroyed, and find my own redemption." The night ended on a note of rebuilding and hope. Alexander, Emily, and even Victoria knew that life would remain unpredictable, but this ordeal had changed their destinies forever. The saved millionaire, the courageous young woman, and the repentant sister had finally found a fragile balance. And for the first time in a long time, Alexander felt free to rebuild his empire, his family and his life, with those who had truly stood by him through the ordeal.